Yeah, and Sakaya, did you say you were going to go tomorrow for your own personal walk?
Saturday morning, I'm gonna do my walk, but I can't walk very much because it's too smoky. But I'm
Mhm.
gonna wear this mask over my N95 and I'm gonna walk around the block and do the selfie and send it in. I was gonna do a big walk, but not now. It's too smoky.
Okay, we're ready to go. Okay, I'll do the welcome again. Hi everyone. Welcome to Times of Thirst and Desire, an erotic literary reading and fundraiser for AIDS Walk LA. Due to the pandemic, AIDS Walk LA is a virtual event this year, and so here we are doing it virtually. And I thought I'd be a little perverse and not walk and just sit on my butt and listen to some amazing writers share their work, share their erotic landscapes with us. So I'm super excited that Sakaya Manning, my co-host, is here, who you'll hear from in a second, about the tradition of AIDS Walk LA. And you'll also hear from our amazing authors and writers, Xochitl Julissa Bermejo, Tay Farnsworth, M. Kigwa, Jessica Salgado, and Dare Williams are here, and you're going to hear from them in a minute. I want to thank everyone who donated to our team. Literary LA has raised more than $1,250 thus far for AIDS Walk LA, and there's a few days left. So thank you, everyone. We really appreciate it. Thank you also to the writers for being here, for donating their time and energy and erotic juices to us, to all of you. We really appreciate it. And that's my spiel. Sakaya, maybe tell us about your AIDS Walk LA experience.
So I'm not used to doing a virtual walk. We've done the real walk for it feels like decades, and raised money for APLA, which provides services and education and care for people who have HIV and AIDS. And in Los Angeles, the numbers, are pretty significant. But California is one of the biggest states in terms of HIV infection in the country. There's like 3 or 4 of them, and we're one of them, but we have a big population too. And youth are a big demographic that we're trying to reach. But I think the more disturbing thing is for BIPOC communities, the numbers haven't really gone down. There's a lot of different reasons for that. One is education, access, stigma. We could go down, there's like 10 things. And so the money that's being raised will help our communities as well. And so we're very, very grateful because just, whether we have a pandemic or not, AIDS and HIV isn't going away. So we still need to do the good work to keep all of the other programs going. So thank you so, so much. For me personally, and for I'm sure everybody who's on this webinar, we know someone who either has HIV, at least someone, or we know someone who has died from complications from AIDS. So we understand the significance of doing work to eradicate the virus. So thank you so much.
Yeah, we're in the midst of 2 pandemics, because the HIV/AIDS pandemic never went away, and when it's coronavirus, is laid on top of that, it's a kind of double whammy. And I immediately thought, well, what I want to do is hear from queer authors and allies to our community about, we know how hard these times are. We also know the importance of pushing through and finding our joy and pleasure and eroticism. And that's kind of where my thinking was, like, oh, hey, let's do an event that really touches on this as an experience we all know very intimately. So I'd like to start us off by hearing from each of the authors, and also hearing from the attendees. What does desire feel like right now in this moment for you? And we'll hear, maybe I can ask us to go kind of in order. So, hey, if we could hear from Sochi first, and I'll keep my eye on the chat. If you're attendees who are here, hey, yeah, what does desire feel like for you right now? Put it in the chat, and we'll shout out that.
Lonely, like fruitless. It just kind of sucks, not to be single during this pandemic and not being able to go out. And it's like I have dudes on my phone on we'll talk for a while. Oh yeah, that's right, you're annoying and dumb. But then it's like, oh, we're now 3 months down, still in the pandemic. Maybe you're not so annoying and dumb. So that's what's happening in my life.
I think for me, it's been very cyclical, sort of in the same way I'm experiencing every emotion in the pandemic. Like at first, I was like, okay, cool. We're just going to be stuck together for 24 hours. That's great. What an opportunity. And then I was like, okay, wait, I can't do literally anything outside of the house. Now I just feel dead inside. And like that makes me not feel sexy, which makes me not feel any desire. And then, you know, all of that kind of stuff, every emotion's been coming in waves. So it's just like some days I'm like, well, we can't do anything else. Should we just like lay on the ground and rub like ice cubes all over each other? It's very hot. And then it's like, no, just kidding. The world is burning and I just want to be sad. So please don't touch me. You know, I think that it's just, I think, and all of my emotions feel like that, you know, so I don't think desire feels any different.
Yeah. I would say that desire for me has been battery operated. And because of that, I have a very close relationship to a number of different sites. And because of that, desire has looked like sliding in their DMs of the people that I see on my screen who have facilitated the battery operation. So that's on my end, desire looks like connecting with my favorite porn stars. Yeah.
Love it.
I think for me, desire has been more like, it's like a living thing now, you know, like it sits around me, it sits with me all the time. Like sometimes it's quiet, sometimes it's loud. It's just like a companion now. And sometimes like it's full of sorrow and sometimes it's full of joy. It's like it comes and goes and but it's here. I mean, like yesterday I was texting a friend. Sorry, I don't think my sister knows I'm on camera. I'm gonna tell her afterwards. But I warned her like a half an hour ago, but I think I forgot to check in. But I was telling a friend, like, I can't even imagine hugging you again. You know, and I think desire has, for me, surpassed even the sexual realm. And it's just about like a human contact that isn't my nuclear family, you know, and it's full of like, I don't want to say sorrow because like everything is still there in a sense, but it's just this, it's like another thing living inside of me and like just chilling there all the time.
Yeah, desire for me feels like part of like a lush space and then other times something super prickly. And, you know, I was talking a little bit about this before of like, I don't know how other folks are feeling, but I'm definitely feeling nostalgic. And we are in a pandemic and things are different. There's a lot of loss and a lot of grief. And I have to be careful though, because nostalgia is a fantasy about the past, you know? And so I desire for maybe a situation to be different, you know? And nostalgia is great if we're plumbing the archive as writers, but like, other than that, it's like, can be kind of tricky, you know, because it's not real, you know? And yeah, for those of us that are like touch deprived or seeking celebration and community, I mean, the other day I just was yearning to be on a sweaty dance floor with friends. I really was. So, but yeah, it feels like something to wade through and it has a co-star, you know, and that co-star can be despair. And but I think like connecting with each other in new ways and trying to just like be slow about that and see what new frontiers come up, we can be in like a really good place with that. So yeah.
We had a few people chime in on the chat. Luke Johnson says, the energy in inanimate objects, thirst, self-caressing, a walk through memory's wilderness.
Mhm.
And Amanda Fletcher is here. Welcome, Amanda. She says, "Oh my fucking God, I miss dancing." Yeah.
And Sochi misses being in bars around strangers.
Yes, new people.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's
I
just,
can feel
yeah,
that.
and like Chance, I miss Chance so much. Like, there's no, like, you can't just, like, maybe something will happen today. Like, nope. Like, that's sexy, you know, just like, ooh, that's not, yeah.
Yeah, it's a plandemic also.
Yeah,
Pandemic.
you do have to plan. Yeah.
It's like LA on hyperdrive. You know, you always had to like talk to your friends and be like, okay, so like, let's make plans. Let's make this happen. It's not going to happen by chance. And now it's like, oh, everything's the same like that. Okay.
I always wonder how, if you're dating, how you know, with a pandemic and a mask and everything, like, because I'm very visual, like, how do you actually make contact with somebody? I mean, do you wear a face mask and then you kiss through the mask, or are you, you know, I mean, if you haven't had your 2 weeks of break, or do you just say, screw it, I'm just gonna, and that's really been my empathy point for people who are trying to date or go hook up, is how do you do that, right? And have that, before we just worry about whether you got a condom and some lube, but now we're talking about, you got to think about all around you, right? So
Well,
This isn't medical advice, but I think if you do doggy style with 2 masks, I think you're okay.
okay,
but it's
I
also
can see
made
that.
but it's also made like things we took for granted more intimate and more sensual. You know, like a phone call, a text message,
Mhm.
a FaceTime, a nude. I'm sure that people have had to like up their nude games and all of these things, but it also has made a folks like, I mean, I'm single, but there's, you know, people I entertain or whatever, and it's made the men in my life be reach further than like, well, I'll show you when I see you. They can't show me now, you know, and so now it's like, what are you going to do for us to have some sort of sexual experience together? Because I won't meet you because I'm not trying to get infected from you, you know. And
Mhm.
so it's made them kind of be a little bit more creative and show up and be more present. It's like how long distance relationships work, you know, like you connect intellectually and emotionally before the physical. And I owe so many people booty calls, so we'll see. I'm gonna hide after the pandemic.
It makes
It's going to
everybody a
be,
poet now. Everybody has to be a poet. They have to up their writing game to make them seem real appealing on paper.
Boom.
I think so too. I think too is like what I'm seeing around me is consent and reciprocity and boundaries are getting set up pretty quickly. Whereas sometimes you date someone and those happen down the line. But now 2 people that really want to date each other or continue or meet in public, you get to find out their willingness right away. Okay, do you get tested? Do I get tested? How do we do this? And if someone's willing to like plan with you in the beginning of something is a really like, that says a lot, versus when someone's like, yeah, I don't know if I want to do that, or you get to like play and see what everyone's boundaries are in the beginning, which is actually an interesting thing.
Mhm.
you have to be better communicators to make it happen. Okay, there's a lot of food for thought there. I'm going to let it sit. I'm going to think about this. And I think right now I would like to welcome Sochi to share her writing with us. And I'll introduce her formally. Sochi Julissa Bermejo, author of Posada, Offerings of Witness and Refuge from Sundress Publications 2016, is a former Steinbeck Fellow and Poets and Writers California Writers Exchange winner. Her work is published in Acentos Review, Calix, and Crazy Horse. She is a member of Miresa Collective and co-founder of Women Who Submit, which is having a huge blitz coming up, and it's an amazing organization. So I'm so happy you could be here today. So I'm going to figure out how to put you on, not on blast, but on spotlight.
Thank you. Thank you, Cody and Sakae. I'm so honored to be here and be part of this reading with everybody. It's probably good I'm going first because I'm like a repressed recovering Catholic. So My story is pretty PG. But here we go. Forget about the rap star and choose me. For our first date, we chose Barnsdale Park for our first face-to-face. I found him sitting under the shadow of a tree at a small table on a terrace overlooking Los Feliz. The conversation began with the latest topic discussed online, our mutual fondness for shrooms. With his face turned toward Vermont Street traffic, his crisp blue eyes peered sideways at me from time to time. Talk turned to his work in the studio as a sound engineer. Sessions often went all night, and he'd woken up only an hour or two before this meeting, while I'd come from a day of teaching high school students. I noted his strong arms and the absence of any pained pauses or awkward interview questions. I suggested touring the Frank Lloyd Wright home in the middle of the park. We walked to the entrance and found the house closed for the day. I spied an open side door beyond a class velvet rope and dared him to sneak in with me. Our footsteps creaked along the hardwood floor of a darkening hallway as we entered an antique sitting room. The act felt clandestine, and I silently willed him to kiss me, but he didn't. One date became multiple, and at each, Jason showed at my door in a pressed collared shirt, and more often than not, holding a bunch of hot pink flowers picked from the street. Sometimes he'd drop by after a long night in the studio to leave flowers on my windshield of my car for me to find on the way out to class. Once he even sprinkled pink rose petals across my bed for no reason at all. To repay his acts of kindness, I once borrowed a waffle maker from my mother to cook his favorite breakfast, but he ended up being too wrecked from a late session in the studio to eat. In fact, derailed plans due to his demanding and unpredictable hours became increasingly frequent. Some nights he wouldn't come over until 7 a.m. But the way his feet rubbed against mine beneath the blankets on Sunday mornings said maybe he found something in me worth loving. About 5 months into dating and at the end of summer, a well-known rap artist Jason worked for asked him to house sit while he was on tour. For days, we enjoyed an uninterrupted love affair, bouncing naked from room to room of the palatial hillside Studio City home. But when the rap star was rumored to be coming back, Jason said I needed to go. The change felt abrupt and hurtful. I ignored his request and insisted on being taken on an overnight adventure. He'd been promising me such a thing, a tender, shroomy moment in the outdoors, since soon after we met. And with the harvest moon soon to rise over the city and me about to start a new school year, it seemed like the perfect night to deliver. The adventure was a test. I wanted to be important to him, to be deserving of flowers and foot rubs, but an ugly and irritating fear lodged itself into my heart. Maybe I wasn't lovable at all. It seemed the only way to know for sure was to press him to forget about the rap star and choose me. I prodded, and he agreed to drive up the coast, but said he wouldn't leave overnight. I rushed home for supplies and packed a sleeping bag just in case. We drove to Leo Carrillo Beach. I popped a couple of stems into my mouth and offered him the bag. He declined, and an irritating fear turned to an ache. At the beach, we walked into a secluded cove lit by the full moon and made love in the sand. After, we climbed onto a lifeguard tower and looked out over the black ocean. I took photos. You're acting like you're on vacation. His tone stabbed. I snapped another. On the way back to the city, he took a route through the winding Santa Monica hills and parked on a dirt turnoff to fool around. Down to my underwear, he dared me to jump out and run around the car. I did, and then he jumped out in his underwear and chased me for another loop before we fell into the back of his van for a romp. For a moment, the ache eased. As we entered the house, his phone rang. The rap star was on his way. You really have to leave now, Jason said. He can't see you in his house. The ache turned searing. My eyes went blurry. I angrily accused him of I don't know what before ripping my way out the front door. On the street, the rap star sauntered up the hill with his entourage trailing behind him. I paused for a moment before waving. His eyes said, "Who the fuck are you?" At home, I immediately sent an apology text and asked Jason to come over. He said no. The next day, I asked him to come over. He said no. Later that day, I suggested taking a walk. He said no. The following day, a movie, and he said no. A week later, He showed at my door wearing a ratted and stained sweatshirt and holding no flowers. My skin felt raw. I drove us to a neighborhood bar. After ordering around and settling into the table, he said, "I don't think we should see each other anymore." "Don't cry," I told myself. "Why not?" "You kind of went crazy." "I guess I do that, but you're the first person I wasn't crazy with." "Well, until now." "Maybe you should have hid that longer." "Right," I said. "It's just hard with your work and never knowing when you can hang out and things changing last minute. That's how it is. But when we first started dating, you'd tell me your schedule, you'd give me a heads up. That was me trying. But if we tried again, I'm tired of trying." We sat in silence as I drove us back. I willed him to reach for my hand on the gear shift, but knew he wouldn't. I desperately wanted this moment to be different. I remembered a day when I thought it could be. He'd taken me to a lookout at the Pacific Ocean in San Pedro, where a hiking path followed rocky bluffs. I chose to wear a strapless denim dress and wedges because my legs looked good in the outfit. At the path, I slipped my shoes off and held them in one hand as I followed barefoot alongside Jason. When a piece of debris pierced the bottom of my foot, I said nothing and did my best not to limp. Thankfully, he cut our walk short and took me back to his place in Long Beach. Sitting on his bed, he brought my feet into his lap and began massaging them. "Do you have a splinter?" "Do I? Don't you feel that?" "I guess, but it's no big deal." He disappeared into the bathroom and returned with a leather-bound grooming kit. He picked out the tweezers. I winced, pulling my leg back. "I promise not to hurt you," he said, guiding my leg to him and hugging my foot between his warm hands before proceeding. It didn't hurt. In fact, when he tweezed the tiny piece of metal from my foot, I noticed an immediate disappearance of a throbbing I pretended all afternoon didn't exist. "Better?" he said, placing the piece in my hand. "Much." I can think of other splinters when my flustered mother dug into my palm with a blackened tip of a safety pin telling me to be quiet when I cried. That's the kind of care I knew before this. Next, he turned on some music, and we danced in the middle of his bedroom. As a melodic song played, he slowly slipped the red cardigan I was wearing off my shoulders, sliding it down my arms. Next, he unfastened the belt at my waist. Last, he moved around to my back to pull the dress up and over my body, kissing my naked shoulder as he dropped the cloth onto the floor. Back in my place, Jason walked me to the front steps. At the gate, he stopped. A step below me, we were eye to eye. "You're a very beautiful person," he said, "and you deserve love." His eyes focused on mine, cutting through to a hurt below. "I only wish you knew it." He hugged me, but when tears began to pool in the rim of my lids, I pushed him away and went inside. I never saw Jason again. All I can say is I thank him for finding the splinter in me. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, just the physicality, the hands on your foot, on the character's foot. That got me. Oh, thank you. Oh. Wonderful. So we're going to hear from Ty next. Let me put this over here. Here we go. Okay. Ty Farnsworth is a mixed-race queer writer based in LA. Since earning her MFA, she's been toiling away in education while working on revisions for her agent. When she's not writing or poisoning young minds with her liberal agenda, she is reading, practicing yoga, cooking, and tending to her plants. Her work, which focuses heavily on self-acceptance and queerness, can be found in the Evansville Review, Sinister Wisdom, Homology Lit, Drunk Mondays, and Anastamos. And she is a veteran of Homocentric, which is a wonderful series that brought us all together that Hank Henderson organized. And that's where I saw her read first. And she's amazing. And so I'm so glad she's here. And she's now in Spotlight. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me, everybody. My story is called 9 True Facts About Hearts. 1. Music changes your heartbeat. Your heartbeat is the same as an 80-year-old man's because your music is from the 1950s. I grew up in prime mixed CD era, so I made you a spot list of all the songs I wanted you to hear, which of course quickly morphed into a sappy, lovey, over-the-top collection of songs by bands that filmed their music videos barefoot on cliffside forests in the middle of thunderstorms. But When I knew we were listening to the same song at the same time, I knew we were in sync. Our heartbeats slowing to match the music, to match each other. A love story in 3 minutes, written just for us. Every lyric a poem from our book. 2. Your heart beats around 115,000 times a day. Obviously, it's not the same for everyone or for every day. For example, remember the night we went to work in a cafe? You had 2 different colored highlighters and a pen in just one hand, and you flipped through pages of printouts, rapidly making notations. I thought I was reading, but mostly I was watching you. The freckles on your nose were a perfect surprise each time I looked at your face, exactly as expected, yet still shocking. You were always like that, familiar, but strange. We scuffed our toes over the gravel in the parking lot, feigning nervousness. We chain smoked and talked about work and music. When you threw your butt on the ground, I lectured you about littering, but you never stopped smiling. Will you just shut up? You said, grabbing my face and pressing your lips to mine. We stood there, frozen in every potential, scared to move forward, our lips begging for answers. Right then, as the night drained from my body, my heart beat 3 times faster than normal, running circles around my brain, racing through my veins, dancing in my stomach. That day, my heart beat around 130,000 times, every day with you. 3. The rhythm of the heart is maintained by an electrical system. I tell you this because I want you to know that every time we touched, I felt jolted alive. No, that's not quite right. It was more than that, bigger. When you texted me, "Good morning, my beautiful evergreen," my body tingled with the joy of it all. I felt the current of your heartbeat from miles away, our electrical systems thrumming across the city, tangling, sparking a fire of passion inside of me. You told me my soul was silly, that you wanted to swallow me whole, that you missed my energy. You told me I was the most genuine, kind, understanding person you'd ever met. The bolt of each word pushed through the electrical system of your heart and right into mine. 4. Exercise is imperative to heart health. This is why I always wanted to fuck. I was worried about your heart health. Postcoital, lying in a sweaty mess on my cum covered quilt, your heart would beat heavy on my stomach or back, and I would think, good, you're healthy. It took so long for us to get there, but once we crossed that threshold, I couldn't stop tasting desire on my lips. Before the first time we had sex, I straddled you at the bar, my friends dancing dizzy around us, and kissed you hard, breathing my want into your mouth. My moans pulled something feral from you, and you pushed me off your lap, grabbed my hand. Enough. Go to your car. Meet me at your house, you said. We didn't even wave goodbye to my friends. The next morning, one of my housemates asked me how my night was, a laugh wrapped around her cigarette. Before I could answer, she said, "Don't worry, I recorded it." And she played a voice memo on her phone of me climaxing with the words fuck and God and shit spilling out of my mouth at 2 in the morning. That was when our hearts were the healthiest. 5. Your heart is about the size of a fist. Once you asked me to fuck you with my strap on. You told me you wanted every part of me inside of you and more. I was nervous, but you said we could go slow. Maybe this is what straight people feel like when they lose their virginity, you said. We lit candles, we put on our playlist, our hearts' rhythms merged. I allowed my mouth to travel the expanse of your body, tasting every sweetness, every saltiness. When you begged me to fuck you, my own pussy became a throbbing ocean of desire. Want overwhelmed me. Every part of me needed to be inside you. And when you came, the rocking of your hips on top of me made me come too. But I wanted more. Hunger consumed me. I needed you to consume me. On my knees, I opened myself to you, offered myself to you. 2 fingers, 3 fingers, more, everything. I was full of you. Your heart is about the size of a fist, I thought. Your heart is inside me. 6. Human lungs develop a little lopsided, the left lung smaller, to make room for your heart. How unsurprising that the heart is so powerful the body builds itself around it. My body changed for loving you. My heart pumped with your name, shifting the molecules of my existence. Remember when your head was in my lap and I tied the waves of your hair around my fingers? That was when I told you I loved you, my hand covering your mouth. Don't say it back, please, I said. I want you to say it on your own, without obligation. I wanted you to wait till your heart was so overwhelmed with love for me that it changed each atom of your existence. I wanted your heart to be its most powerful self, pumping blood into your body that knew only love for me. 7. Heart cells stop dividing. This is why cancer of the heart is so rare. It's also probably why your heart was never big enough to share. Once your heart was built around someone else, I never really stood a chance. You couldn't evolve to have me in your life. Your heart was already formed, made without my name in its walls. Sometimes we'd be sitting in the dark, watching the cherries of our cigarettes light up the night, and she'd call. You would answer. You always answered her call. My heart would beat truths into the night. She isn't meant for you. She loves someone else. But the worst was when you'd leave to be with her, and I let you because I thought if I gave you time, you'd eventually see how much happier your heart would be if it was with mine. You didn't. Your heart cells weren't dividing anymore. 8. Broken hearts feel similar to heart attacks. I know this because I've had a broken heart more than once. The one you created was particularly calamitous because my heart was still barely healed from the previous break. Every night before that last night, we lay wrapped in each other, and you held my hand while I walked you through all my rainy days. I cut a window into my chest so I could show you the stitches on my heart. They were fools, you said. Only a fool would hurt you. And yet I stood across from you, scuffing my foot from disbelief, long since past my nervousness, and you detailed all your lies. Your words ripped through the scabs I'd spent almost a year building. Turns out you were never trying to hold my heart in your hand. This wasn't about building for you, this was about distracting. This was a journey of mending your own broken heart with pieces of mine, a shattering of hearts that left me sobbing smoke into the night air. We are fools, I thought. 9. The heart can continue beating even when it's disconnected from the body. This is true and verifiable by science. I'm also an expert because I walked away from you that night and felt my heart ripping itself from my body. I held my heart in my hands, felt its dull, listless throbbing, and waited for it to still. For days, I was sure it would stop beating. Out of respect for my heart and our many years together, I tried to make its last days pleasant. To keep lint from gathering on my heart's aorta or pulmonary artery, I put it in a Ziploc bag. But I didn't want my heart to feel like I was treating it clinically, so I put the Ziploc in a small velvet purse around my wrist. I walked around with my heart, hand on my chest, keeping my heart near its home, offering it as much comfort as I could. At night, under the covers, I held my heart close to my mouth and whispered words of kindness that it had forgotten it deserved. You are good. You are powerful in your softness. Don't give up all your tender beauty. My heart stitched up its wounds and kept beating, looking for a future love song to sync up to. But it refused to go back into my chest, knowing the safety my skin and muscle and ribs offered was insufficient. So I keep my heart in that bag around my wrist, always, showing the world my unending tender beauty, giving it all my softness. Here, can't you see? Watch it beat.
Thank you. Claps all around. And Sakaya had a shout out for you. Mending your own heart with pieces of mine. Relatable. Okay. Moving to M. Kikuwa. Welcome. M. Kikuwa graduated from the London School of Economics and Political Science with her master's in Media, Communication, and Development. Media, Communication, and Development, and has worked in the entertainment industry in the United States, Europe, and Africa for over 10 years. She's currently writing an adventure memoir as a 2020 PEN Emerging Voices Fellow. I can't wait to read the adventure memoir. Welcome. Let's see.
Thank you.
And you have spotlight. There you go.
Hi there. Okay. The last reading, Ty, was just so beautiful. I had to cut my breath a few times.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay. We agreed on $3,000 a month, lump sum. But just so we wouldn't have to discuss it again, we hammered out the terms during dinner. On the first of every month, he'd send my allowance through PayPal, because that'd be easiest for him to remember. But as he casually mentioned during our date, he didn't want to be bound by rigid rules around the whole thing. He was saying what he didn't want to say, that when he felt led by the Spirit, he wanted to be able to spoil me freely, that the 3,000 was just where things started, but was certainly not the ceiling of his affection. The number ricocheted from left ear to right. Within seconds, I felt a wetness spread across the insides of my inner thighs and knew they'd stick together if I kept sitting in the same position. To distract myself from the overwhelm developing in the pit of my stomach, I shifted slightly to open my legs, circling my left ankle around itself over and over, this way and that. What was it Betty Friedan had written in The Feminine Mystique? That when she stopped conforming to the conventional picture of femininity, she finally began to enjoy being a woman. My left foot stilled as my gaze followed the golden shadows bouncing off of the dining foyer's open doorway. My eyes panned the never-ending shelves of books, the paraphernalia from his movies, the piles of snacks sent to him by agents, adoring fans, and random Los Angeles candy shops. I don't know, Betty, I thought to myself. This $3,000 picture of femininity feels pretty good. Joan Didion slouching towards Bethlehem and Huey P. Newton's revolutionary suicide had been placed on top of each other on the couch in the living room, while another stack of books I couldn't read the spines of sat on the table next to the sofa. That I'd read both, and most of the other books in his library, had impressed him most when I visited the first time. That down the hall, we'd watched Victoria and Abdul in his indoor movie theater and had complained about its colonial gaze had impressed him second. But we weren't at dinner because of his admiration. I'd been caught. His email a few days before had been accusatory. I'm not one to sit in judgment of what you feel you have to do in the quiet turning of your considered conscience, but I have to be honest and say that I'm disappointed and that this has kind of put me back on my heels a bit. Apparently, he'd see me with a new and updated profile on the dating site where we'd originally connected. But in order to have seen my profile, he'd have to have been searching and lurking as well. Sure, I was trying to find more men like him, but I wondered while reading his email, wasn't he also trying to find other women like me? Monogamy is a funny thing, and men are comedians. Still, here I was, trying to remedy the rift, trying to pretend I could be a good girl. Exclusive. Kept. He'd admitted in his email, maybe if he gave me an allowance, it'd keep me satiated. At the dinner table, I turned my attention back to my plate as he finished talking. Forthrightness for forthrightness. Understand that I would hate to lose you and would very much want to hear from you as you move forward, and perhaps advise career-wise where appropriate. But if this arrangement works for you, that would be wonderful. But I also understand if the money is not sufficient and that you'll have to do what's necessary in lining up other options. I sat back. 3,000, 3,000, 3,000, 3,000. I took a sip of wine, clenching my legs together. No, I responded. That's perfect. That works just fine. By the time I got an offer as an executive assistant to a prominent Hollywood showrunner the following week, he'd already sent the first payment. I thought being a 27-year-old assistant was kind of silly, especially when my friends were already making names for themselves in Forbes 30 under 30. But when I told him about the new job, I woke up the next morning to an e-gift card for $1,000 from the Four Seasons Spa. Well done and congratulations. Thank you for making my gray life less dreary, was written in the email. Our dates were no less glamorous. A yacht chartered so I could see dolphins up close. While spending our day cuddling on the boat, I read him nascent poems from a collection I still have yet to finish. He read me his mentor's poetry, the words piercing and visceral. Another night, we went to one of LA's popular restaurants. With celebrities and athletes buzzing about us, he ordered the entirety of the menu so I could sample it all. Afterwards, I told him everything about me. The even days in Massachusetts living with a stepfather who hated the sight and sound of me. The odd days in London staring at train tracks, wondering how long it'd take to clean brain matter from the front of the train if I jumped in front of it. He showed me his dark spaces too. A cruel, abusive father who hit with words and fists. A mentally unstable mother who tried to kill him multiple times as a child. We unraveled ourselves, the both of us revealing underbelly soft to touch, vulnerable and tender. After our dates, he'd kiss my cheek and slip an envelope into my purse. I'd count the money in the Uber home, always $1,000. His promise that I'd be well taken care of, that his care was a waterfall, the meat falling out of the broken husk of a coconut, a river flowing towards me. It startled me, this generosity, but even in theory, even before I'd met him, even before moving to Los Angeles, I'd known about the power of creatrix, about the Betty women of Benin, those healing women who dragged themselves up a mountain and through a black ocean, they're tied a bridge between calamity and peace. I don't remember how I'd learned about them. I was probably reading something obscure titled Pre-Colonial Sexuality in Africa or something. But from wherever I'd learned about them, I'd also learned that theirs was a secret council of wise women who gathered at night during the harshest of times when stakes ran high. It is said, the way secrets are said, that when rain refused to fall and famine kissed fledgling seeds of maize into dust, these women of mystery saw how people wailed into dry riverbeds and how people wailed into empty granaries. And when enough was enough was enough, they decided to pray. On a full moon, they'd climb together slowly, steadily up a mountain as dark as their breath, and upon reaching the top, would lie down in a circle with their feet inward, their heads exposed. They would chant and they would sing, and when it was time, they would pull up their dresses and skirts and touch themselves, softly at first, but then harder and in rhythm. And as they writhed, they moaned, and as they moaned, they sighed, and well, with wave upon wave of orgasm, together in communion, they would leverage the power of their wetness, asking the universe, please, please take our offering. This rite, Mavungu, was not from ashes to ashes, dust to dust, but from water to water, life to life. Mine too pulled the tide, and I happily would have given of my body, but my sweet benefactor was happy to court me in the traditional sense. Always a kiss on the cheek at the end of the night, always respectful, always chivalrous. He didn't realize it, but I wanted to share myself with him the way I'd shared my body with people over the years. From the sex parties I threw in my apartment, to the random people I'd messaged on Craigslist. From the felon 2 days released from prison, the mother who made her kids sit outside her apartment while we finished, to the hedge fund guy with his loft in the middle of West London. To these people I'd asked afterwards, doesn't it get tiring? Do you ever get lonely? A convict responded, don't be on no bullshit. The mother, sometimes. Maybe you could hook me up with a guy you know? The financier. I mean, it's not as bad as the younger guys. So much money, cocaine, new Ferraris, fucking women every night. I'm not that at least. But yeah, it gets lonely. I could have said many words to these three, or the countless who survived things much worse than I did, I admit. Cities are lonely. And even us who know the sweetness of living in the shadows, the birthing pains of art labored in anonymity, even we want to open our arms wide in the street, to be seen by both sun and moon, to be as those wise Betty women, recognized and embraced by the elements. We are light, I wanted to tell him, but we are also sweltering and willful, weathered and cosmic, pulsating and raw. We are perverts and holy, oaks and their roots, worlds entire. We are insatiable. We are a river flowing, worlds entire. Wounded magicians calling into the dead of night, please, please, take our offering. But I never got to tell him these words. He ended things 4 months later. He said he had tax issues, that the movie he thought he'd be writing and directing fell through, that something cash flow had dwindled. I wanted to believe him, but I knew the real reason was he felt betrayed. Me being me, I asked for a severance gift. One last PayPal notification for old time's sake. $3,000 for the road. He sent it, and our rendezvous ended as quickly as it began. And how he found me is how he left me, thirsty and insatiable, walking in the dead of night, calling like those women from whom all wise women hail, praying to the blackness of the sky and waiting patiently for it to rain. Thank you.
I'm muted. I said, wow, yes, I love how that moved. Yes, thank you. Oh, and so she wanted to say she loved the line, monogamy is a funny thing and men are comedians. So good. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to welcome Jessica Salgado. Welcome. And Jessica is a Los Angeles-based Salvadorian poet who writes about her family, her culture, her city, and her fat brown body. She has shared her work in venues and campuses throughout the country. Salgado was a 2017 and 2018 National Poetry Slam finalist. Her work has been featured in the Los Angeles Times, Teen Vogue, Univision, CNN, Huffington Post, NPR, TEDx, and many other digital platforms. She is an internationally recognized body positive activist and the writer of the column Suelta for Remezcla. Jessica is the author of bestsellers Corazón, Tesoro, and Hermosa, published with Not a Cult. And for those of you watching, if you go to the Bookswell website, you can click and buy her books right now if you want, but actually you should wait and listen to her first because she's amazing. So welcome, Jessica, and take it away.
Hi, thank you. First of all, that was so beautiful, and I was so enthralled by the story that I forgot I had to read. And then I was just like, oh wait, I'm next. I love when that happens. But okay, so here we go. I have a couple of poems for y'all. It's like, yeah. So this first poem is called "The Good Girl," and I'm also a recovering Catholic, is what I call it. I recently got accused of being sacrilegious, so some of that will be amiss. Mommy raised a good girl, one that never speaks about her pussy, even when a lover slowly sinks a finger in. One that squeezes eyes shut, nods when he asks if there is more that she wants. But what I want is to jump out of my body and into his. I want to find a way to wrap into his nervous system, into the twitchy muscles of his abdomen. But my mother taught me that men only want one thing, yet I want to give this man that one thing. I want to let him have it until I am empty skin, and until I am empty and my skin stops being so much tightrope I can't seem to ever cross. My mother taught me that women that give too much too soon get left behind, but behind is the same as never leaving, and I have to come before I go. I want to come before he goes, but I am a good girl. I pretend that my body isn't a vibrating cord pressed against his body. I pretend that climax isn't the only freedom I know. I pretend that my moans aren't orange peels I curve into the night, leaving me all sticky, naked pulp, ready for his mouth. And I am no longer a girl, and good is subjective, and womanhood isn't the throbbing between legs. And I know this well enough. Have told myself sex isn't definitive. Have tried to hush my mother's voice that has now become my own. I am silent when my lover enters me. I am waiting for the moment I break into writhing and moans. Only then do I leave the girl out of the good, the way that my mother raised me. And this next piece is actually about 10 years old, and I'm excited to get to share it today. It's called Pornography. And yeah, so here's this poem. The woman is a fruit the man has taken into his mouth and rolled between teeth and tongue, smooth and perfect, on a table across the room. Sitting alone inside a too large bowl, there's a misshapen plum, watching, being bruised by time. It wanting to be the woman, or the man, or the bed holding them, or the ceiling sprawled above them, or the spit glistening in the sunlight, or the noises they set loose like vapor, or the teeth and the tongue, or the floor blushing beneath them, or the God that they keep screaming for. The plum is rotting with an ache to be bitten. It watches, quietly trembling, as the man's mouth rises from the woman's body. Chin pulled with juices, he wipes with the back of his hand before he turns for more, and the woman smiles, one arm draped off the side of the bed. The plum across the room in his too large bowl, imagines that this too will be how she will be eaten. And then the next couple of poems I'm going to be reading are from my latest book that turned a year old yesterday. So I'm excited to be able to be reading from Hermosa, which is my latest book. And she's the last one of a trilogy of books. I like saying I have a trilogy. It makes me feel like I'm somewhere in the family of Star Wars or something, or Twilight, although, you know. This is called Milagros. One time, when I worked in a parking lot, I couldn't wait to go home. So I walked up Montana Street, where I had keys to an empty office building. I let myself into the bathroom. I lay on the tile and slid my hands down my pants. Without thinking of anyone, I remember the orgasm, my uniform, hands under the cold water, washing my smell off my fingers. That's when I used to belong to myself. Or maybe it was when I was most lost. Either way, the world was ending, and I could make myself come like I was raising death and always won. Dick sucking. The first time I took you into my mouth, we both lay in your bed, a strange geometry of limbs. The sheets were blue and the moon colored the walls. I imagined you were underwater and the only way to stay alive was to finish what we had begun. I went home that night, throat swollen and the smell of you in my hair. My driver must have known that I had just earned my legs. Punchline. This is one of my favorites. I ate his ass because I loved him. I gave myself lockjaw sucking dick. I swallowed the bitter cum. I nodded when he asked whatever it is that he asked. I let him eat my pussy all wrong. I moaned in the name of romance. I arched my back, pulled him in for a kiss. His heart was in the right place. Later, I laughed with my homegirls. I don't know exactly what the joke was. His awful, oh my goodness, his awful, awful sex. Or me neglecting my body and calling it love. And my last piece, it's called Sacrilegious. And recently somebody purchased my book on Amazon, and I don't check my reviews just because why torture ourselves that way, right? But my sister checks them for me and always lets me know when there's something interesting. And she let me know that somebody was very, very upset that I used Catholic imagery in my sexual poems. And she was like, I want a refund. This is sacrilegious. And I hope Jessica finds God. And I was just like, girl, I did. So here's this poem. It's called Sacrilegious. This is a church that I built. There is no God here. I burned all of the Bibles and hymns. All the statues lay on their backs. I am dressed with the lace kept for the altars. In this temple, there is no woman weeping at a man's feet. The apostles were sent off and asked to never return. The wine remains. It is still blood, and I offered it with manicured hands. Religion keeps folks warm at night, and my lovers know the creed of my bedroom, sweet sacrament of thighs and mouth. There is only one choir, one song, moans, venerating my blessed flesh. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Oh, bringing the erotic to the people. Thank you. Ooh, okay. It's getting hot in here. It's getting hot in here, everyone. Next up, we've got Dare Williams, a 2019 PEN America Emerging Voices Fellow. Dare Williams is a queer, HIV-positive poet, artist, rooted in Southern California. He has received fellowships from John Ashbery Home School and the Frost Place. Dare's poetry has been nominated for a Pushcart Prize and a 2-time finalist for Blood Orange Review's contest. His work has been featured in Cultural Weekly, Bending Genres, Thrush, and Exposition Review. He is currently working on his first poetry collection. I've seen Dare read at the Drunken Masters event, and this is going to be quite a treat. So Dare, take it away.
Thank you so much. Thanks for creating this space and doing the work you do. And thank you to all the readers. It's a real joy hearing everyone. I'm going to read some poems. Etymology. It starts in Phoenix, growing in the dark, moves its way to you, then leaves me breathless. In Hollywood, where we laid our heads, there was a break, and I said, okay, let you drive, even took the seatbelt off and moved to the floor. I was half animal lying in the grass when it surprised me. I was soaking the bed, not taking calls. After the first result, I blew it off, put the secret into some flowers, and had them sent to you. I watch you paint. At your little table, a rectangle of sunlight on your arm, a pencil in your mouth, you have just mixed the most perfect blue. The whole of human history widens. You can see me there. I make tea and stretch my arms and send you a kiss. You have just smeared a yellow so vibrant, I want to pleasure you. All of this, we know, is temporary. This place, this portrait, your gaze over the canvas to see me shirtless in the kitchen, washing my hands as I tell you about the day, the brushes by the sink, drying in a cup. Silent footage, Keith Haring dances with Basquiat. It's twilight, which means I'm thinking of you, which means it is time to take my meds. I've learned to like the little pink ones, Valentines to my blood. Darling, you thrill me. What do you want most? These pills I swallow are politicians, all promise to keep me alive, but they're not working for me. Since I have come to love you, that makes me a believer. I've been saving a supply in secret because when the government cuts us off, I promise you'll get mine first. Today, I covered all the mirrors, not wanting to see my ghost, staring back. I always get lost in this joke, the one where I am on your bed, naked and completely cured, and for a time, we don't worry about policy or punishment or our disease. Just my wish to be painted up like something they won't forget, a masterpiece living forever, a name you think of in every color. Saturday nights all right for fighting, Mineshaft, New York City. Men in these midnight hours pull on you, hands around your throat, counting the seconds of your pulse, a whisper buried under the tongue. All that language begging for an open ear, a car you chase for the promise of an open mouth. You think time is yours for the taking, a luxurious watch, something to steal. Rushed breath simmers through the hallways, a door closes, carries its own wish, one you keep to yourself. You go there again and again, thinking tonight will be different, thinking this is how you will be saved. Found objects. We met in spring, colder than usual. A sun glazed in our mouth. The earth felt different after you caressed my bush. I counted every freckle located on you. I still recall the number. It was in the 20s. There were dinners with friends, Polaroids later stained with coffee. That winter, my body broke. You carried me to bed. Before you, No one had done that. You drove me to the clinic, were there when the office door opened. I walked out of the lobby into a new life. It came with a different type of instructions. We took the medicine together, powder pink. We kissed as it went down, eyes open. That was a long time ago. We were different people then. Time is not a circle. Time is a vase we hang on to while seasons pass through us. Thank you so much for everyone coming. This is my last one. I am lifted from the loudest part. The day opens, this golden bell, two birds on a vessel. My neighbor sings in their kitchen. I am lifted from the loudest part. I arrived alone. I admitted I am a body that wants. A horn is blowing out onto the street like a prayer a poem rearranges. I am lifted from the loudest part. There is a place where I have kept secrets. It's soft skin, a field of tiny hairs, this quiet patch, a breezeway. I am lifted from the loudest part. Come softly and gently put your light there. Show me how to move across this body. Hover there and hold me. Witness the way I bend. I am lifted from the loudest part. It hurts too much to bloom. This mighty cold chamber, this labor of risk, this gateway, this shade, this soil, this dark cloud. I am lifted from the loudest part. Thank you.
Thank you, Dare. Thank you, Dare. Thank you, everyone. My mind is still stuck on the time is not a circle, time is a vase that holds the seasons. Close to that. Beautiful. Thank you, Dare. All right. So we're gonna breathe a little bit, and I know it's getting late, so I do want to close this out soon. But I do have a couple questions, and if that's about where are your fantasies ranging these days? And let me bring everyone back into this. Whew. We got a lot of people chiming in on the chat. They're super excited about what just happened.
I think as far as fantasies for me, I found myself a lot about like just sharing a bed with somebody else. You know, it's been a while, and like, yeah, the sex happens, right? The sex will always happen. That's what I tell a lot of my younger readers. I'm like, don't stress about that. That's gonna happen. But it's the intimacy that happens during, before, and the after is kind of what I miss, like the carnal secrets between you and another person. Like the knowing eye in a room, oh, like flirting. I miss flirting so much. And like the coy eyes in a room. And I think that that's the fantasy that I have, to be able to like be in a room and know that like someone's eyes is following me around the room, like that kind of, that's what I find myself like desiring and fantasizing about the most.
Being in a room with like lips that you can see and breath that can touch you.
Breath, and then being able to be coy and knowing there's someone that wants to take you home that night and they haven't gotten your yes, and that like that dynamic, that power, like the sensuality in that is really intoxicating, and I miss that. You know, like the being sassy and like, you know, the flipping the hair and knowing there's just somebody that's just like, oh, well, you just tell me what's gonna happen. And even if you go home and nothing happens, you still had that little dance, and that's what I miss.
Yes, similar to that, I think, is the getting to know somebody else, that period of someone saying something and you being startled that, you know, they're surprising or unexpected. I really miss that. And also, I think, I don't know how other people feel, but I feel like this year I I'm a different person. I have become someone different. And we only learn who we are. I mean, therapy only goes so far. The poems only go so far. It takes being in relationship with others and communing with others for us to understand these different layers. And so fantasies are about who are the people who I think I know and how have they changed, and who are those like new people who will enter my life, and who will they be, who will I be, and how will we unravel ourselves with one another? Will we be more intimate? Will we be more kind? Will we be more sweet? Will we offer one another more depth? That's my hope.
I love all of that. I think what's been really interesting for me exploring the concept of fantasy is that I actually got into a relationship like a month before we went into lockdown. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm moving in. And then I was like, I could actually just totally move in. And so now I just live here. And what's been interesting about that is I feel like there isn't like a required expediency to our relationship, and I don't think that has has made it suffer in any way. I think it's really beautiful, and I'm so grateful for the way that played out. But I also think that because nobody outside of our world sees us interact, I think that my fantasy is like the idea that people could see truly how beautiful this love is and how beautiful things have grown to be, and instead of just this like, oh well, Ty just like moved in with somebody, I guess. It makes like the fantasy is just this dynamic in a group to like share my love with the world, and not just within the privacy of my own home anymore. My own home that I basically stole.
I think the fantasy for me is finding someone who makes me feel good and who wants to make me feel good, and vice versa. I miss feeling good and having something to make me smile like that. But then also it's like I've in my past from like the story, I've dated a lot of men who just want to take, and it's like that's already something that's hard to get around, and then with the pandemic it's even like harder to find someone who is even, you have to even be more willing to like go that extra mile and give more and care about someone's like well-being, like extra amounts. So but I want to find it. I want someone who, that's the fantasy right now. That gets me excited.
I've been thinking about how like I like kind of what everyone is saying, but like what I am willing to accept or not accept when it comes to mediocrity, not only in myself, but with others. So like, it's like, I'm really seeing that this is like pushing a lot of people into this other realm, and kind of like what we say in writing is like, just say the thing that's on your mind and in your heart, and say it. And I know it's scary too, but just do it anyways, because we're all in this space where life really is too short, and I know some people who aren't here anymore, and like the fantasy for me is to like have no regrets. So just say the thing that's on my mind. And if it's scary to do it, like walk through that anyways, and I do miss dance floors and connecting with people and running into a stranger and possibly flirting with them through like house music and dance and like live concerts. So I have a fantasy that those will come back and we will all be dancing in celebration.
And the bodies will be coming together. I love that. Well, everyone, thank you. I think this has been, yes, this has been. I don't have any prepared closing words, but I do want to just thank you again for sharing this intimate part of yourself with us, and for everyone who joined us. I hope you found this to be, like a little fire in you. We gotta celebrate the erotic. I mean, it's like, it's so important for our happiness, for our well-being. Like, we got to make spaces for it. So thank you for being here and for creating that tonight. I appreciate that. Big hearts, big asses, big hearts.
Wow, that's my motto.
That's me.
I
That's gonna be
mean,
my
mine's gotten bigger over the pandemic. So hey,
that's gonna be my new Tinder profile. Like big ass, big heart.
There we go.
as it should be.
Yes. Thank you. It was such an honor. It's the first time I heard any of you, and y'all are amazing, and I can't wait to go find more of you. I'm gonna Google you up. So thank you. It was an honor.
Thank
We'll
you,
all
everyone.
come together again, for sure.
Yes.
Okay. Good night, everyone. I hope you all come. Or have tender moments, whatever you're looking for.
Good night.
Good night.